You are listening to the Unslaved Podcast. Please welcome Michael Tsarian and David Whitehead.
The New Age movement. What is it? Where did it come from? What are the pros and cons? How has it evolved? That's what we're going to be getting in today, Michael and I here on the Unslaved Podcast. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And we're going to be looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly, and really dissecting this whole movement and what has happened through the passage of time since its inception. And has it become more like a religion when maybe in a way it was a movement that started out of a virtuous reason of trying to move away from institutionalized religion or, dogmatic materialist science? It seemed like those were the only two shows in town. And my reading of the New Age movement is that it sort of popped up as a reaction to that, and it incorporated a lot of the Eastern mysticism, the Eastern philosophy, as well as a certain amount of Western occultism. And then it maybe started out with some good intentions, but it has totally changed today. And there seems to be a lot of fraud and a lot of charlatanism going on. But we're here to dissect that and really get into the nitty-gritty of this movement. And so, Michael, let's maybe start off with a personal story. This is something that you kind of grew up with a lot of people within this movement. You also branched out and started doing some research. But before we get into the research that you've done on it, let's talk a little bit about your personal story with the New Age movement.
Yeah, thanks, David. It's a great show, and looking forward to getting into this. It's quite a many-faceted subject, the New Age movement. But you're quite right. Members of my family were involved with the New Age, so probably from around the ages of 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, if I think about it. I was fairly up close to it. I would never consider myself a member of it by any means. In many respects, I was an outsider looking in, but at the same time, I was up close to certain things. Come from a Krishnamurti background, which I don't necessarily think is New Age, even though a lot of New Agers are into Krishnamurti. And we have a bit of a background in Steiner. And of course, I went on to study these people individually outside of any framework, you see. So you have that. So from our audience's point of view, my critiques are, as an insider, you could say, I spent time reading the Course in Miracles. I was on the scene, when a lot of these channeled works like the Urantia book and came online. I was on the scene, when you had the flurry of actualization groups, of which Werner Erhard and Est would be one that people might be familiar with. But there was Sage, and there was actualizations, and there was so many other these, like the Landmark Forum, that kind of thing. I was on basically right there when a lot of this started. We can talk about more of that in detail. My grandfather was a leading light, a really big heavyweight in the New Age movement back in the early, mid, and late 70s. But he was sort of under a very great man called the Reverend Paul Solomon. We can talk more about him later. And he was an exceptional man, a very, very brilliant man in my eyes, and love him very dearly. And it's important to know that there are some good things within the New Age movement. There really are. But just like anything, just like fashion, the rockers and the mods or whatever, it starts off as something authentic, with maybe some good feeling. Like you said, I really do believe that the movement wouldn't even have come online had it not been a reaction against 2,000 years of orthodox religion, which means tissues of lies, tissues of deception, tissues of master-slave think. So when somebody objectively looks at the New Age movement, we'll be getting into some deep critiques in this program, but it's very important to point out that if you remain objective and you just look at it, you've got to agree that of the two Leviathans, of the two monopolies, Christianity is by far the more evil, more sinister, and has done more damage throughout the world than the New Age movement could even dream of, right? I mean, as bad as it is, as horrific as it is. And think about it also in this way. The New Age movement hasn't been going very long. There's been sort of spiritualistic groups before, right, going back to the turn of the century, 19th century, 1920s, and so on. But the New Age movement is really from the 1970s. And as I said, I know that because Dr. Brew Joy, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, these are people that I met and know. The great Sir George Trevelyan, another super, super duper person. Wonderful human being right there, deeply involved in the Celtic tradition, you see, and then moving up to Paul Solomon and Keith Critchlow, name after name I could mention. Some of these are wonderful people. Alan Chadwick. I mean, come on, these are mighty, mighty souls. And you move forward. So just like everything, it gets corrupted. The works of the Paul Solomons and so on starts to get bent out of shape in exactly the same way that Buddhism, Zen Buddhism in a la California, isn't Zen Buddhism anymore. It's a hybridized version, and some authors are responsible for that. Others try to preserve the truth. You have the great Alan Watts, who preceded, he was the New Age movement. He's a little bit before that, you see. And so there's great schools within it. And if you're discerning, then at some point you're just going to go, I really like the Alan Watts and I like the Krishnamurti. That sings to me. I really don't like Conversations with God, Neale David Walsch, who knows what God's talking about. God says this, God says that. Anybody got a problem with that? It sounds like the religion of old. So then you have that aspect where the New Age movement, in one hand is a reaction to the age-old religious paradigm, but in many ways has hybridized some of the stuff of the old Christianity in order to sell books, they know what demographic is largely Christian or quasi-Christian. So they drag in a lot of familiar traits, the Christ, which is so bogus even within Christianity. Or they'll bring in the Messiah, or they'll bring in higher archangels and all this palaver. And they'll bring in God, G-O-D, in almost a religious, not a philosophical connotation, not as your great Goethes and Schellings and Steiners really meant it. No, it's God just cut and pasted right out of the tenets of religion. So we have a major problem there, you see. There's a certain amount of hybridization. The Christians have done it too. The Christians, if you've been watching Christianity, especially evangelist type speakers, right, that school, you will notice that they have hybridized a lot of the New Age concepts, like prosperity and thinking positive and changing your diet and all of these things, that if you scroll back to even the late 80s, I mean, I've done it. You go back and you listen to Dr. Gene Scott, Gene Scott. Go back and type in evangelists of the 1970s, 1980s, and you listen. Some of it you can get taped off AM radio and stuff. I listened to that stuff through the 80s and 90s. So listen, it was one animal then. And as we turn in from the 80s into the 90s, it becomes another animal. And most of the people that are prominent now within the evangelist movement, and there are some exceptions, are deeply involved in this cut and pasting from the New Age movement. So there's a lot of gray areas actually in there, but so my critiques are as not as a New Ager, but as someone who is a sort of an enlightened witness with, observing quite interesting changes right at the center of the movement and living also physically in California, you see. And so we used to go visit the Ojai Vedanta temple regularly. We used to go to the great Vedanta temple in Los Angeles regularly. We'd go to, these different centers of these different Maharishis and what have you. And God, it's a lot of stuff. And as I said, my grandfather had a foundation right there in LA. Paul Solomon's was over in Virginia Beach. The Course in Miracles people were at hand. You see, the great Krishnamurti schools, it was the done thing in those days. But I think that basically I have to distinguish that no matter how bad the New Age movement is and how pathetic in many ways and how watered down some of the tenets got and polluted and corrupted and hybridized, let's get it straight that it is in no way as obscene. And again, to qualify that, the New Age movement, as I say, has only been around since the 70s. So what, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, 20, 30, 40, 50 years? Christianity's been around for 2000. So how anyone could even imagine that anything that the New Age movement generated that you don't like, it's easy to see it within a 30-year period. If you don't like something about it, you saw it pretty much from the off. And so the remedy then can follow in due time. That's a very short period of time. How long did it take people to start critiquing Jesus and the Bible and the New Testament? Thousands of years before one could even raise a peep against it. It's not until the 20th century. It's not until, okay, you have Bruno Bauer, but it starts in the sort of the 18th century, one or two voices. you have your Schopenhauers, and it creeps forward. And you don't really have wholesale. You don't have Ralph Ellis. You don't have, Gerald Massey. You see, 19th century, 20th century, that's very, very, very recent. The origins of Christianity go back to 2,000 years. The origin of the New Age movement goes back to 1970. And it's already, people have lost interest in it, and it's toppled, and people like us now can sit and do these critiques. So, let's understand that, the cockroach is bad, but the giant elephant, the giant hideous monstrosity of the other. So I've got deep penetrating critiques of the New Age movement. We'll get into that in a minute, but I'm not doing it as someone allegedly saved by Christ. That word Christ shouldn't even be in the New Testament. It was interpolated. Get it. The real word that appeared repeatedly was Messiah, and that has a completely different connotation. That's a Jewish term that means a king or a lord or a Caesar type person who's coming to save the chosen people politically, meaning he's of a particular line. He's either Hashmodean or he's he's one of these from the house of Israel or house of David. You see, like that. He's of a specific bloodline recognized by the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the people. And he's a well-known Messiah, and the Jesus character, should he have lived, was only one of those guys. There was many other Messiahs that had been spoken of and were predicted to come. And every time that the New Testament redactors saw the name Messiah, they translated to this Greek word Christos, and it doesn't belong. It doesn't have a meaning. And the Jews, that's why the Jews and the Christians have a major, argy-bargy, because they don't know what they're reading. They go, what's this Christos appeared in the place of Messiah? We know what the Christos was. That's those pharaohs. That's those sun gods. Well, we don't worship that. So even if you take it on board that first of all, the translation is bad enough, but even if Christian insists on Christos, look, mate, you're not going to be any happier intellectually, right? Because the word Christos was many, not 10, not 15, not 16, 200 Christoses. Even Caesar Augustus was a Christos and a soter, a savior. Okay, people can go to my Refuting the Refuters article and check that out, because I deal with some of that briefly in there. And also, I would recommend my astrotheology site, if you bring that up, because people need to go there. And I'll tell you why a lot of my work on astrotheology has happened, and that is because, you see, in the turn of the 80s, 89, moving into 91, 92, when I got into conspiracy type work more deeply in America, right? My mentors, for the most part, were Christians, right? The Ralph Eppersons, the Tex Marses, the Jack Moore, Reverend Jack Moore, and Nord Davis. Who am I thinking of? Eustace Mullen, G. Edward Griffin. The list is actually a long one. And I had no problem with that. I respected those people. They know me, many of them, and I know them, and we've never had a problem. These were brilliant, brilliant men who dedicated their lives to exposing the world, the global conspiracy. There's many I could name, right? And they were all Christians, and we're on the same page. That's part of the Western culture, right? Western tradition. The vast majority of people want to be Christian. I'm not, but I'll be that because it's part of Western culture. I'll support them. Okay, what happens? 2005 or something like that passes, and suddenly I'm getting attacked online now, mostly from forums and different things, by this group of fanatical Christians. And some result of that is I personally just lost, and this went on and on and on. So I lost my respect for Christianity. If I still have to deal with individual Christians of the names I've mentioned, these great people, I'll still do so, But, I lost complete interest in the religion of Christianity, and even set about saying, well, now I will expose your frauds, because you seem to be bothering a lot about what people like me are doing. I'm not even a Christian. You have no right in my work. And if you had little difficulties, if you saw something in my work that wasn't right, I mean, I'm a beginner. I've always said that. Then you know what you do? You email me like the thousands of others who do, because my work is very collaborative, and people